I'm Peter Hagen, the Associate Dean of General Studies and Director of the Center for Academic Advising at Stockton University in Southern New Jersey. And welcome to Humanities-based Scholarly Inquiry, an overview. In this session, we'll explore the rich contributions of the scholarship of academic advising that have been made and can be made by conducting scholarly inquiry using humanities-based approaches. The humanities and the social sciences provide us with the two main highways into the conducting of scholarly inquiry into academic advising. In general, the humanities-based approaches are less heavily traveled by those who conduct research in academic advising than approaches in the social sciences. So we'll start with outlining some general features of the humanities and how scholars can use the humanities to conduct scholarly inquiry, research, into academic advising. First, with regard to epistemology. Scholarly inquiry has to do with knowledge, and so the first task of any researcher is to examine their own position on how we come to know what we know. Put another way, it is important for any would-be researcher to examine their epistemology, which is the branch of philosophy that is concerned with the nature of knowledge, the limits of knowledge, and on how knowledge is produced, stored, and retrieved. In broad outline, scholars in the humanities hold an epistemology that views knowledge not as uncovering facts that have until now remained hidden. Rather, they see themselves as constructing knowledge. Generally speaking, one's epistemology just seems like common sense. It's exceedingly difficult to take a step back from one's research project to examine the epistemology within which one operates. Steeped in the traditions of the social sciences, one researcher might say, well, of course we must use the hypothetico-deductive scientific method. How else can we dispel uncertainty and get as close as ever we can to the truth? By contrast, another researcher, nourished in the traditions of the humanities, might say, I'm going to do a close reading of these texts, examine them in their historical and cultural context, and take into account the author and the audience. How else can we dispel uncertainty and get as close as ever we can to the truth? Both researchers are in pursuit of the truth, but their two notions of truth might differ somewhat. The former regards truth as fixed and knowable. The latter regards truth as mutable and constructed by human subjects. This is why it's difficult to see things outside of the epistemologies one has already adopted. From the vantage point of one epistemological stance, the other seems like madness. Yet, as Emily Dickinson once said, much madness is divinest sense. The field of advising needs researchers who travel either of the major highways so that we may come to know and understand the whole of advising. It follows from such an integration of epistemologies that we need researchers and consumers of research who, though they may drive one of the two highways, respect and understand those who travel the other and trust that we need both ways to get there. Well, with regard to the aims of research, the aims of humanities-based scholarly inquiry center around ideas of meaning, value, and understanding. Researchers in the humanities, while they certainly respect the importance of facts, are less concerned with the facts themselves than with what to do with them, with what they mean. How shall one behave? What is the right course of action? What do these facts mean to the persons that they affect? These are typical questions that point to the aims or ends of humanities-based research. Well, take, for example, the notion of student success that is so prominently talked about in academic advising circles. Scholars arising from the social science backgrounds might seek to measure graduation rates, ethnicity, gender, and so on, and seek to analyze the causes of student success with an eye towards increasing it. In broad terms, prediction and control are among the primary aims of social science. Scholars coming from the humanities backgrounds might rather inquire into what student success really means to students, to faculty, to the institution, and to society. They might ask how it should be defined or valued, or if there should be different kinds of student success. At the most fundamental level, humanities-based scholarly inquiry into academic advising has the aim or end of understanding. Well, method. Humanities-based scholarly inquiry into academic advising uses methods that are different from those used in social science approaches. Yet, seen from the epistemological standpoint of constructivism, especially in view of that primary aim of humanities-based scholarly inquiry, understanding, such methods make good sense. The tools that humanities scholars use are imagination, interpretation, which we also know as hermeneutics, argument, and judgment. Texts are the primary focus of humanities-based scholarly inquiry. Such researchers even regard humans, both as individuals and in society, as texts that can be subjected to hermeneutics, that is, to interpretation. Scholars in the humanities would likely argue that there is no one method to reach the truth of things. Nevertheless, there are some research methods that are commonly found in the humanities, though it would be a mistake to think of these as highly defined and mutually exclusive. In fact, it would be best to think of these methods as variations or even flavors of humanistic inquiry in general. First, critical inquiry, found largely in philosophy and literature scholarship, involves the investigator studying the meaning of a text and constructing arguments in favor of one interpretation over another. They may discuss applications of that interpretation or examine ways that the text under scrutiny interacts with other texts. In advising research, investigators have recently looked at the works of such philosophers as Martin Buber, Thomas Dewey, Martin Heidegger, Hans-Georg Gadamer, and Paulo Freire, and how their work might pertain to academic advising, always with the aim of understanding advising better and hence doing it better. The field is wide open to you to study the meaning of texts, whether written or breathing, to come to a deeper understanding of academic advising. Secondly, narrative inquiry is a relative newcomer to the scene. It seeks to arrive at understanding through story. This may likely to prove to be home territory for researchers in academic advising because we listen to student stories every day. Narrative inquiry helps us understand students in context, not as an aggregation of facts and traits, but as a unique story that is unfolding. The goal is not prediction and control, but rather understanding of how that student constructs meaning, how they see the world, what is important for them, where they see their story taking them. In narrative inquiry, the relationship between investigator and subject is important. It is therefore necessarily subjective. It is not the scrutiny of an impartial investigator seeking to uncover the truth of an object. It is an investor engaging in process, not product, seeking nuance and understanding. Narrative inquiry is about expressing truths about human life that do not lend themselves to the methods, whether qualitative or quantitative, of the social sciences. Rather, narrative inquiry allows the investigator to use what they already know about narratives, including things like plot, as well as taking into account the address nature of story. That is to say, there is always an author and an audience. Third, historical inquiry, as its name implies, focuses on the past. But more than that, investigators ask themselves about the meaning of the past, the reliability of sources, and then arrive at interpretations, as with critical inquiry. In recent years, there have been several articles published about the history of advising in the United States, but the field is wide open to you to engage in historical and cultural inquiry into advising all around the world. Historical inquiry could also be used to examine the history of individual advisors' careers, biographical inquiry, if you will, as well as the histories of students' experiences at a given type of higher education institution. And then lastly, phenomenological inquiry seeks to understand the lived life of a human being, based ultimately in the philosophy of Edmund Husserl. It rejects the notion that things in the world exist independently, out there, separate from the human minds that perceive them. It focuses on what is immediately apparent to the perceiving mind, phenomena. Phenomenological inquiry is found among the qualitative methods of social scientific inquiry. That's true, but we must also claim it here as a humanities-based method given its origin in philosophy. Then with respect to validity. In the social sciences, validity comes about by rigorous application of method and by the replication of studies by different researchers. It is similar in the humanities. the rigorous examination of texts and phenomena, and the subjection of those findings to the scrutiny of other researchers. Humanities-based scholarly inquiry must be tested in the crucible of public debate. Humanities-based scholarly inquiry remains valid until it's overthrown by more compelling or convincing inquiry that replaces outmoded interpretations or schools of thought. This is known as a paradigm shift in the sciences. But often, however, the old school of thought survives, and both the old and the new have their adherents and devotees who then engage in scholarly debate. Inquiry, and by extension academic advising, are enriched by this debate, not impoverished by what to the scientists in the crowd might seem like ungrounded speculation. So in conclusion, if your own scholarly background is in the humanities, welcome home. Your epistemological stance, your research aims, your methods, and your striving for research validity, all are here waiting for you to apply to academic advising research. If your own scholarly background is in the social sciences, check it out. There's more than one way to arrive at the truth. Well, after this presentation, there are some links to other resources to help you conduct your own humanities-based research in academic advising. Thank you very much.